on my attention. My countrymen, they love their fiction. Words upon now, it's made with good intentions.
Welcome to 10200, the Politics and Media podcast. It's nearly Christmas. Who cares? I'm joined by my co-host, Ginny. How are you doing?
Yeah, caring very little about Christmas, so you're correct.
And also Simone from Hamilton.
Yeah, I'm in solidarity with my Chinese and or Jewish and or other brethren and sister in that I'm not a big Christmas person. I have to okay, here's the dirty dish that I have to do. I have to go down to Wellington to see my family. And the reason I was going to do that is because I primarily wanted to see my mother, who had a cancer scare last year. And once you have that, it's kind of always with you, right? And you don't know how long really you have with somebody because it could always come back and all that sort of stuff, right? So I thought that I really wanted to do that. And then she said, "Oh, I'm not going to be there at Christmas, actually. I'm going to Australia." And I was like, "You fucking what?" So I have to be with my siblings, some of whom are not talking to each other.
And who all listen to this podcast religiously, and they're just going to have heard you say this. So there's going to be some interesting Christmas discussions around the dinner table. I think I'll feel better about Christmas when I have a couple of more days between me and the end of the working year. Solidarity with everyone who is still struggling through it. But we are here today to do current events. What is hateful? What is lovable? And what is happening in the world? God, it's been a bleak one, eh? I was like,
It's been a bleak one.
It's been a bleak one. I changed up the format so that we're like forced to like talk about things that were good instead of just like doing the top current events, which were always hateful. But yikes, this week. Ginny, do you have anything ready to go? Do you want to start with your most hateable thing or your most lovable thing?
I think we can start with the most like hateable thing. That's
Okay,
probably safe.
it's the hate train to kick off.
There are a lot of things to hate this week. I want to put it out there. There's actually so much stuff to hate. But the more I thought about it, the thing that I hate or like personally made me feel the most annoyed was that, well, obviously the police have started charging people, right? After the like gang insignia thing. Like it's just kicked off. And now they charged a bunch of gang members after they made a post on social media showing them wearing band insignia. And apparently it's just to refresh people's mind under the new legislation. If you're caught displaying gang insignia in public, you're liable for a $5,000 fine or up to 6 months imprisonment. So let's just think about that. Like frame that in your head. Your like social media, like Instagram posts, they're just wearing jackets, okay? And this, they could cop 5K as a fine, up to 6 months in jail. Now let's just like rewind a couple of months to this year, where after a 2-year long investigation, they finally charged an Auckland cop with assault for punching two teenagers who weren't resisting assault in the face, right? And they had this was footage captured by a third party, and it was shown around pretty much everywhere. Teens were lying down on the ground and were punched in the head by a police officer. It took 2 years for them to successfully charge this guy with assault, even though there was like multiple angles of footage, both from a police helicopter and also I think it was from a cam of some sort. Two innocent teens weren't resisting arrest, getting punched in the head. 2 years, right, to even get like charged with this whole situation. Also, I think it was last month, a police officer released a video of himself in uniform hugging up on an exotic dancer. No shade to her, get your bag, sis. But I think it was determined that he released that footage like publicly as like a weird, like we're broken up, like a weird revenge porn type thing. No investigation on him though. Just like, oh, he owned up. It's fine, not a big deal. And that's okay. But you pose with jackets on with this insignia in a new photo, and it's 5K and a fine up to 6 months in prison. That's crazy. Like immediate crackdown compared to the scale of the other two offenses or the other two examples. It just like makes me angry. It sucks a lot. Like,
Yeah,
why?
one of these gangs is not like the others.
Yeah, why are we doing this?
Has he just been charged? Has he had his first appearance? The one who assaulted the teenagers?
I don't know if he has actually. I remember reading about it, and it was like the headline was that he had just been charged after a 2-year long IPCA investigation.
Yeah, watch him get a discharge without conviction, folks.
Yeah, it's we're reaching, many people have been saying for a very long time that the cops and carceral policy is not in the interests of the working class, but we really are reaching new points of class consciousness about exactly how the police operate in Western society, aren't we? I guess slight jump over a very big ditch to the United States, where Luigi Mangione just had this huge, like, theatrical police march with the mayor of New York slowly and solemnly walking behind him as well. Just absolutely absurd. What are they doing? What is going on? But we're likely to see similar kind of levels of kayfabe, levels of theatrics, appearing more frequently in other jurisdictions as well, as that kind of crisis of capital becomes more and more evident, and as these new pieces of legislation, which are more or less aimed to attack vulnerable groups, regardless of how they frame them up as being, attacking the gangs or other criminals or etc. They're just legalizing harassment and abuse. And as you said, Ginny, the cops already get away with a fuck ton. There's already this enormous divide between the way that they and the capital class are treated compared to the rest of us. And I think that's just becoming more and more apparent as the days go by. Simone, what do you hate?
So much, honestly. I mean, it's difficult to pin down exactly what there is, but I don't know. I think everybody's been reading a lot of the news, and so I don't necessarily want to go over that again. And I was trying to think about something more deep diving. So I guess having read some more of the cognitive science of reading lately, I hate the American education system, and I really hate that New Zealand has contributed to illiteracy around the world through the program that was sort of developed by Marie Claire in the 1970s. You may know it as reading recovery, which does the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do in terms of utilizing kind of a cueing system. So what it does is, rather than actually teaching kids phonics and teaching them how to sound words and then develop an understanding of them through context, what it does is kids will look at a picture in a book and just guess the sentence and guess the words that are in it that are more likely. I'm not joking. This is like the way that they teach reading in the United States. It's probably contributed to the illiteracy quite a bit. And there are a lot of people in New Zealand who were put into reading recovery because they didn't read well in the first year, and they have struggled for the rest of their lives. Something like apparently 40% of children, just in the papers that I was reading, will kind of learn to read effectively no matter what you throw at them, so long as they have exposure to the language. But for 60% of them, if you do it wrong, they'll really struggle for the rest of their lives. And once you're an adult, it's not necessarily baked in, but it's very, very, very difficult to unpick those neural pathways, right? The way that you learned to read, which was a way which makes no sense and doesn't follow cognitive science at all. And we've known for half a century of cognitive science that reading doesn't work the way that it's taught in Reading Recovery, which is a program which was spread around the world, not just in New Zealand, and which most American curricula are based on. But it's just, they won't change it, even though we've known that for half a century, right? And the reason is because education is partially privatized in the US. I was reading one of the, I can't remember the name at the moment, but one of the companies, the private companies that develops curricula for school districts, made something like $500 million in a year from selling its materials. So this is big money, and there is this private marketplace which stymies any sort of real education being given to people. There isn't public education anymore. It doesn't exist. And in New Zealand, ACT is trying to undo that further, right? Because it used to be that a public education was for the purpose of, in paraphrasing Woodrow Wilson, there is to be a class of persons who receive a liberal education and others who receive a factory education, right? So the majority of the population is supposed to be made literate in the 20th century sufficiently so that they can work menial drudge jobs that have no bearing on controlling the course of society. And our small select class of persons are to receive an elite education, and we can see this through, for example, the boarding school system or through private schools in New Zealand. a much better education, ostensibly, which will allow them to go on that escalator pathway up to university to then fill the roles that are needed within the top of society that shape and steer the society, right? That kind of professional class of responsible men, in the words of Lippmann. And I think what we're seeing now with AI, with charter schools, with everything, is a total undoing of even the idea that the majority of persons in a society should get a public education, minimal or sufficient enough for them to do a job. Because I think what the libertarians realize is that we can have a post-scarcity society now. And since that's the case, and since automation may begin to grow further, and they believe their own hype and huff their own farts a lot, right, about AI, but in general, productivity increases, automation increases as technology advances. They realize that a lot of people are going to be thrown out of jobs and or just become kind of useless pawns who are, in their view, leeches on the society. And so they don't actually need to get that education. They're not needed. But there's also the idea that education empowers people. And we saw that in the 1960s with the student protests. And in New Zealand, we saw the flow-on effects of that. And I think there was that kind of union movement, there were student movements, but largely it was the Maori Renaissance that caused a crackdown, right? So we see the Misuse of Drugs Act come in 1975. We see a lot of our carceral policy change, and we see the neoliberal period begins as a way to disenfranchise vast numbers of people and to sort of undo any of the gains of democracy that have been made in New Zealand, which was much more formally an apartheid state earlier in the 20th century. And so the idea now, not only to disempower people, not only to imprison, again, half the prison population is Maori, they're essentially political prisoners, if you want to think about it that way, is to try to disempower people from being able to dissent at all against the forms of repression that are going on. And that's only being deepened. So I know I started talking about reading recovery, but what ACT is trying to do and what National is abetting ACT in doing really has to be understood as an excessive form of social control, an attempt at permanent repression that's future-proofing against any sort of rebellion. And that's something that we have to resist. And we have to learn how to resist. And resistance isn't just protesting, it's also education. I genuinely think that a large part of outreach has to be basic literacy and numeracy in terms of leftist movements, because that's some of the things that I see the most with clients in the cells. It's people who just can't read and write, and so they're not eligible to do rehabilitative courses. They can't get parole. They can't improve their lives at all whatsoever. And not only that, but people who you would think would be kids who can engage can't read theory, and they can't learn from the past and learn from those mistakes because they can't effectively read extensive texts, right? So I think part of that resistance has to be education. And that's kind of what's really pissing me off, is that we're not putting those pieces together.
Yeah, the charterization stuff, we've been banging on about it since this government kicked off. Since before, I think, during the campaign, seems so blatant. They're crowing about it alongside this kind of soft coup of the curriculum, where they do all this language, and it's all like speaking out both sides of their mouths, like, oh, we have to go back to basics, we have to do this, we have to get literacy and numeracy up. We're going to make this new curriculum that just focuses on the 3 R's or whatever. But as you say, like, that's not the model. That's not the model being taken from the United States. What they want is to create and undermine it enough that it provides a cottage industry for these big curricular companies to come in and be churning out new stuff every year and extracting capital from the state to prop up their businesses. We've just seen this week as well that ideology is also being applied to tertiary by the polytechnics. Te Pukenga talking about splitting that framework up. And I think, Ginny, did we decide? They haven't outright said they want to privatize, right? But it's very clear that they're suggesting that could happen, which means it's almost exactly what they want. My most hateable thing, and I guess this is kind of overarching across both of yours, but far more optics based, is Elon Musk backs Germany's far-right AfD before elections. AfD are like the modern day German Nazi party, essentially. And he wrote a post on his website, which he is now forcibly advertising his own tweets on. It's fucking pathetic. His tweets will appear in your sidebar. And he said, only the AfD can save Germany. There's just nothing else to make of this at this point, right? This is the alignment of the world's richest man with open fascist politics and Germany. We're going to find out potentially what World War II would have been like if the US openly, I'm going to say openly, came in on the side of the Nazis instead of just airlifting them out and employing them in the rocketry program. It's this really frustrating response as well. And this is that really clear crisis of liberalism. Like people say, scratch a liberal and a fascist bleeds. But a lot of them are just also fucking idiots, and especially in these top positions. So Scholz, was the chancellor in Germany, who's currently fighting to retain that in elections, told reporters in response to this line from Musk that freedom of opinion also applies to multi-billionaires and means that you can say things that are incorrect and do not contain good political advice. How's that working out for you, you fucking idiot? And this is, we've been going on and on about this for 6 years, since we've run this podcast. You don't win this way. You can't appeal to free speech. You can't appeal to rules and norms. You can't say, oh, they're having a bad idea. These people have so much resource, treating them in the same way that we do here, like the Free Speech Union is treated, like the Taxpayers Union is treated, it's very well evidenced that they are astroturfs that are pushing non-liberal agendas, non-freedom of speech agendas. That is not what their actual goals are. And the media and politicians here, in the same way that Scholz has made mouth sounds about Elon Musk, say, oh, they're called the Freedom of Speech Union. So they just want freedom of speech. We're just going to publish everything they say verbatim. And you end up in this fucking position where you're, as a mainstream media outlet, tacitly doing advertising for a far-right Holocaust denier. They've hacked you. Your system does not work. Your worldview is defunct at this point if you're continuing to do what you do. And I have a lot of time for the argument that they know exactly what they're doing. This is about plausible deniability for those liberal institutions as much as anything else. And that among major decision makers and the like, that's almost certainly the case because it's alignment with capital, right? Where they are platforming the things they need to platform, and being able to hide behind the propriety of this language around free speech, just as these far-right astroturfs are. But everyone listening and watching should have a fucking clue about it at the very least. And certainly, people like Olaf Scholz want to win and be in charge, I imagine. And this is not going to do that. You lose if you do this. You eventually just lose, and you lose badly, and they put you against the wall.
Just to explain, if you know anything about voting, the former DDR is one of the biggest supporters of AfD. And the reason is, as you might imagine, they lost out. It wasn't an annexation. It was just an immiseration, an impoverishment of that entire sector of Germany, right? And with the repression of the left, people turn to the narratives that they're fed, right? These fascist narratives about immigrants coming into Germany and the usual like. We don't have to repeat it here. So I think this is the same thing that we're seeing everywhere, right? But what's important to understand about Germany is the historical context. And I think that a lot of people believe they understand the historical context, but they don't. I highly recommend Cornish Beatty if you are a listening person. There's a podcast which talks about a lot of these contemporary issues. And I think there are two sort of sections which we might look at, right? Which is pre-war, kind of going into wartime, and then kind of post-war. And what happened partly following the division of Germany, which some of our older listeners, if they do exist, might remember, is there was one which was, a puppet state of the Allies, and another one which was part of the Eastern Bloc, right? And West Germany didn't denazify. There's not really any other way of putting that, because they were too useful. So a few people were put through the Nuremberg trials, and then a whole bunch of others got to keep high up positions. And a lot of their progeny, like Ursula von der Leyen, are still around, much like Alessandra Mussolini in Italy, who's the granddaughter of Benito Mussolini, is a prominent politician. Large number of politicians in Germany and people who are captains of industry and other ones are just the descendants of the Nazis. And their parents and grandparents were never actually disbarred or exiled from public life at all. In fact, they were enriched. And some of the worst ones, as you noted with Operation Paperclip, were whisked away to the United States or to other places. There were also stay-at-home operations. And again, I have to pump Corner Spady podcast a little bit, because their URL is operationglad.io. So if you know what Operation Gladio is, that is perhaps the most well-known stay-home clandestine paramilitary operation, which was run by the United States through its clandestine arms like the CIA, where they would arm and fund terror groups and paramilitary groups in Europe that were anti-communist, meaning that they would repress any sort of left-wing Democratic Party, the unions, break up any possibility of anything that would challenge the hegemony of the United States, and did this by bombing swaths of people, by various forms of terror and political repression. Exactly the same as happened in Japan in the mid-century, in the immediate post-war period, right? Which explains in large part why these countries are so messed up. So if you want to understand in the immediate post-war period, almost every political party in Germany, except for Die Linke and maybe SPD, are all essentially like varying forms of Hitler. They are like, the Greens are like environmental Hitler,
The Greens have really been bad as well in the last.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about the German Greens. I do think the New Zealand Greens hosted a talk with them maybe a year ago or something, and I thought, I wonder if the members actually know, and if anybody will have the balls to actually ask them, like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And why should we even be, linked with you? But it's kind of important to understand that they are all just varying flavors of it. But AfD wears it on the sleeve. It's very popular among young people, which is a huge problem, as you can imagine, because they'll be the next generation. But a large part of this is that they didn't denazify, and then we're seeing exactly the same material conditions, or rather, close enough parallel of the material conditions in the Weimar Republic, which led to the disintegration of any sort of liberal democracy, that everything's repeating. And we can see that again. I mean, the repression of the left, this alternative for Deutschland, right? That's what AfD stands for, arising to give people other solutions to it, this kind of economic impoverishment, but also, on the other hand, a relative privilege compared to some of the outlying colonies. And all of those tactics of the colony, and Aimé Césaire's words, which I often come back to, being turned inward toward the metropole, right? That kind of there's a term in vogue at the moment, imperial boomerang, which I think is quite a kind of vulgar way of understanding it, but it's useful for people.
We love an imperial boomerang.
Yeah. As a kind of gloss on what occurs. And we're seeing exactly the same thing. So Trump doing this isn't a huge shock. Other people doing it is not a huge shock. Elon Musk doing it is not a huge shock. I mean, he's whatever you want to say about him, like just a weird, grimy little goblin incel, right? Like, except that he's the opposite, and he's somehow spreading his seed far and wide.
Don't say it.
He's a weird, quiverful guy. He's like the atheist version of those Mormons who have a million sister wives, right? And so he's not an incel, but he's got that real energy. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a loveless loser who can force people to hate him by having to love him, by having billions of dollars,
and who's been carting his kid around as a human shield since the UHC shooting.
This is my son and partner, HW.
Just, I'm still blown away. I know we talked about it briefly last week, but God Almighty. Yeah, I mean, yeah. And Musk has been in and around a range of Western democracies. Like he was just doing a stand-up with Farage as well, right? For the Reform Party in the UK. He has talked about and popularized Javier Milei in Argentina. I'm sure we'll see people courting him here sooner rather than later because we're directly tapped into those same international structures
Locked
that are part
in.
of this project.
He's kind of like one of those like old white men who goes on like sex tourism trips, but instead of like sex tourism, he's just like,
Oh, oh my God. So he called the Thai submarine guy a pedophile. That was pure projection, right? Like he's a guy who would go to Thailand and yeah, like be one of those horrendous like sex pests.
he really just feels like a guy he goes to like, I think he looks at every modern Western quote unquote imperial democracy like it's just a skirt to be lifted. You know, like what was he doing? Like literally
Ooh.
attacking those judges in Italy just for what? Blocking a migrant detention plan. And then the most recent government shutdown stuff he was doing with Trump, like just tweeting absolute complete misinformation, like round the clock, like what was it, like 6 hours before the bill was meant to pass,
Yeah.
and then causing an entire government shutdown. Like
Watching
he
all
just doesn't give
the
a fuck. Like he doesn't give a
Congress
shit.
members like going, sorry, sir, please, sir,
Yeah.
live on Twitter was fucking pathetic.
Just
Just
awful.
like, but the just shows how destitute Western liberal democracy have become that one rich guy
Yeah,
is able
exactly.
to kind of generate this level of absolute subservience and performative bootlicking. It's anyway, that was my most hated thing for the week. What's lovable? What are we enjoying? We'll kick back over to you, Jenny.
Oh, what am I loving this week? I'm probably gonna go to the zoo again.
What? So lucky.
Again?
Yeah, 3 weeks in a row, baby. You know it. Like, nonstop.
They don't have
Fucking
the elephant
every time.
anymore. What's the point?
Look,
What do you mean? What's the point? The zoo is like a place of beauty. I don't know why you're being so negative on it.
Instead the Werner Herzog quote about like nature and violence.
What's good? What have I been happy about this week? Almost nothing. I feel like there's just nothing which really makes me feel like everything's gonna be okay. I just think I just don't have that. Does it have to be like a current affairs thing or that's the tough part?
it has to have happened recently. That's the whole kind of format of the podcast is current events. It doesn't necessarily have to be classic current affairs if that's like if all you've got is you're going to the zoo for a third time in 3 weeks, good on you. I'm glad
Yeah,
you're finding
yeah.
a space in which you can escape.
Oh, sorry. I did have a good thing. I
Thank
did have a good
goodness.
thing. I did have a good thing. I saw footage of this the other day, like maybe like yesterday or the day before. And it was of the Te Pati Maori co-leader singing
Oh
a
yeah.
song. That was good.
The Stolen
Um,
Māori Land song.
yeah, in the tune of Winter Wonderland, which was obviously like a roast of the coalition. And I thought
Mhm.
that was very good. That was a good thing. And also good that like everyone else that went after that was just shit. Like I think Chris Luxon will show you like a weird self-deprecating, like, yes, like I'm not doing so well and like tough shit. Like, okay.
I like that no
Maybe
matter the genre, you can always do the kapahaka strum on the guitar. Like I just and the dominant seventh voicings. I was like, wait, you can do that with this song. It was kind of fascinating.
it was pretty great.
You could
But
take jazz and do it.
Chris Hipkins, unsurprisingly, or maybe surprisingly, spent like a long time just actually comparing the government progress to various movies over the year. Like just like inane, like what was even the point of you being there?
Snatch
Like
their wig.
Labour Party, kick out everyone who is advising your caucus. Kick
Yes.
them out. Kick them out. Hire anybody else. Just literally
Let
go and
Hipkins
find
go goblin mode.
30, do
He
that
needs to go
too.
goblin mode. He needs to be fully unleashed
Hire
and he needs to
30
go
people
goblin
off
mode.
the street. Just walk up to 30 random people, tap them on the shoulder. You are advising the Labour Party now. Please save us.
Mm.
And it'll be an immediate overnight turnaround. I swear to God.
Chris Hipkins should start referring to himself in the third person as Chippy. I think like Chippy is crabby at the government. I think that would be really a good thing.
Jimmy thinks the economy sucks. Yeah, maybe.
Chippy doesn't like the fiscal outlook. Also, yeah, no, I've got another thing which I thought was like, I don't love, but I think it's funny. But keep
This
going.
makes him seem like a small like puppet, he sounds like a ventriloquist doll the way you did that voice. Like it's like the fake voice you give like a little animal.
My
Like
siblings have asked me when I come down, they're like, "Can you take Roger?" Which is like the old ventriloquist dummy which my grandpa had, and I was like, "No,
No, absolutely
don't
not.
do that. Roger, if you do that,
Although,
he needs
Roger's
a doll
locking all the
hospital,
doors and
and
killing
it's
your
not like
family.
a hospital for the dolls, you know, for the FFS. It's not that. He needs a doll hospital. Like he's got some bits that are not
what if
working.
Oh,
you
this is how every horror
refurbish
movie
him to be
starts.
Chippy?
You're
I
not.
know Roger. I'm familiar with Roger. I know Roger. He's not unlike. He's not a stranger to me. He's good to me, but like,
That doesn't. That's
I can't take care
terrible.
of him.
No, Roger.
Moving on. Moving on. Yes, that was a good moment of end of year cheer. Once again, Te Pāti Maori and Rawiri Waititi delivering. Simone, what was your funny thing that maybe isn't lovable?
Oh, it was Chloe Swarbrick and the Greens again. Like, just I can't. I want to shake them, right? Like, say you can't stand up in Parliament and it seem authentic for you to angrily say stuff like, Mr. Speaker, fiscal expenditures are down minus 0.5%. Like, that's not a thing you can be angry about. It's just wonky bullshit. Nobody knows what that means. Nobody cares about it. And also, really, as the Greens, are you going to criticize the government for hypocrisy and being supposedly pro-growth, implying that you're pro-growth? Like, is not the purpose of environmentalism to be degrowth, right? Like a redistribution, not only of wealth, but of power in society, such that we don't need to be so inefficient and wasteful, right? Isn't that the point, that you can have a better life which isn't so materialistic? And therefore, GDP should be going down, just in a good way, right? Why would you do that? Like, there are so many different layers of like, it's so wrong and so embarrassingly wrong that it's almost funny that they're standing up in Parliament and doing this. I just
And
can't understand how after, what is it, like a decade or something of Shawism, they just can't get it
I
out of
can't
their
quite
blood. They
flush it
can't
out.
expunge James Shaw. He's still in them. It's useless. You will never get the percentage points that you want out of doing this.
And even
It's
the people who
just,
it's aimed at, right? Like
I
the
was getting a lot of praise
gallery.
on Twitter, but this only appeals to Twitter people and
Well,
public servants.
and I guess the idea is like, oh, the gallery and business reporters will be like, we're speaking their language, and will they won't catch us out on the campaign trail, when we're putting up the numbers. They're gonna fuck you up. You're gonna get half a percentage point wrong somewhere, and they're gonna like say the Greens are economically illiterate and should be thrown in the bin.
It doesn't
Like,
matter. National Business Review is not going to come out and be like, oh wow, the Greens really know their
everyone
stuff.
should
And
vote
if
for the
they
Greens.
do, it's because you are doing something bad.
Yeah, like know your enemy, and because your enemy knows you, let's be really clear about that.
Kyle, they could win up to 12 votes of different journalists by doing this. I don't know if you know
No,
that.
those votes are unwinnable now. Like we are so far past that point with New Zealand's political media landscape. It is absolutely absurd.
What if the
It's
Greens could do an entire political and electoral campaign of hundreds of thousands of dollars directed entirely toward the vote of winning Jack Tame? Did you ever think about that?
I think what you'll find is that a lot of political journalists take a real
Don't
pride in
vote.
not voting. They're fucking idiots, these fucking clowns.
That means they're objective, Kyle.
Oh,
If they
that's what it means.
decide
Okay,
not
yeah.
to
It's really
engage.
important. It's really important that we have a political media that doesn't vote and is thus objective, and there's no other way to tell whether they are or not.
I mean, the way that you know that they're the perfect people for their position is that they believe that their personal beliefs actually have any bearing on the news that comes out, right? Like, if you're a journalist, you're not allowed to understand how institutional dynamics work. You're not allowed to understand how political economy works. You're not allowed to understand a really basic thing that just about everybody else who is in a workplace understands, which is that the person who pays you actually determines the output of your
What?
factory. Right? Not you. It doesn't matter if you're a person on the factory line and you have like a different belief system. It's kind of irrelevant.
And
But
this is like,
journalists are the only people in a profession who don't understand that. And that's why they're perfect handmaidens to power, because they are too dumb in a really specific way. Like they've been hit by a stray bolt from a Ferris wheel at the carnival that was
whoops.
rolling away. You know, they've lost the part of their brain which feels shame or understands how institutional dynamics work.
And we've got this, New Zealand's biggest
Lawyers have
media
a
outlet.
similar thing, but it's different, called lawyer brain. But
Everyone's got a different kind of brain. Yeah, New Zealand media outlet.
I hope they are. Get some brain this Christmas. That's my recommendation. Get some different
Fantastic.
kind of brain that hits different.
Beautiful. New Zealand's biggest media outlet, Stuff, like recently revealed that the owner was part of a heavy air quotes, non-partisan, non-political, they even call themselves a pressure group or just a group that wants to make Wellington great again and is now running like public polling as if they are the arbiter of direct democracy. It's cooked. Like,
Direct
I'm sorry if
democracy
if you
of
work
Karen
at Stuff, I'm
Prendergast.
really sorry. I'm really sorry, but your entire organization has been hijacked from the top, and you are actively part of a system pushing far-right rhetoric
Do you
to
remember when
undermine
they
public
did?
services.
Do you remember when they did a mea culpa about racism, and then like 2 years later they're doing this?
I
They're like,
do.
no housing for poor people. No. The
No,
character,
changing
listen,
things to
the
Maori
character
names.
of Mount Victoria, whatever the fuck, is that it's cold and it's damp, and our tenants all have emphysema.
And it's not earthquake safe.
Asthma.
And look,
It's not
that's how we
safe.
like it.
The character is that all of my tenants are going to die in the next quake.
Beautiful.
That's what's important about Wellington.
Think
is that
about
we all live on edge like it's the Edo period in Japan. At any moment, our lives could be snatched away, and that's what gives them meaning. I think that Wellington is going to develop a culture of seppuku just out of that, right? Like as a result of it, because life is so precious. Life is so fleeting that you want to die on your own terms. There will be an honor culture developing in Wellington as we speak. Public servants who are made redundant will go out with honor.
You know
I'm
what? I
predicting
think
this. I've
this
been watching too much Shogun, but I'm predicting this going into the future.
this really fits well with my belief, which is that most Wellington slumlords have life insurance policies taken out on their tenants.
Such a everybody's playing the lottery, baby. They're playing the life insurance lottery. The tenants are playing the lottery, which
Sucks.
what
Hey,
you
I'm
have
sorry.
to
I'm sorry,
understand
everyone.
is only increasing in participation because times are tough.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's
Do you have a
never
lovable
good
thing?
sign.
Do you have a lovable thing this week, Simone, or just a funny thing?
It's you two. You're so lovable, Ginny and Kyle.
Look, thank
So
you.
alarmed
Look,
by that.
what a way to finish the
No,
year out.
no.
I feel
I haven't
validated.
finished. My lovable thing is that the year is over. The year is over. I've got nothing else. I was going to say, and work is over, but actually, I still have to do some more work. I'm so on my holiday. But you know what? Work is over, sort of. It's Christmas.
Work is over
I
for some of
actually-
us.
I
My
really
work's over.
hope-
Jenny's work's over.
Yeah, I really hope that people drive safely.
Good
It's
call
already
out.
happening. Just I don't
Yeah.
understand why, but I don't understand why, but just do. Like I don't
Yeah.
somebody who knows better would have to explain and understand why it is that the message doesn't get through. But like hopefully I just let the message get
Spit in
through.
the face of Minister of Transport, Minister for Child Deaths, Simeon Brown, and drive to the conditions and not his absurd belief that cars should be driving on our roads as fast as possible. My likable thing this week, and it just stacks up, and I know that the impact of these things is minimal, but slowly but surely, perhaps, is that another major human rights organization has come out to say that Israel is committing acts of genocide, and that was Human Rights Watch late this week, in particular around the denial of clean water to Palestinians in Gaza, and directly called for the international community to impose sanctions. Which, God, I hate these organizations and how fucking slowly they move. You know, earlier in December, Amnesty came out as well after doing their own investigation into it. Gee whiz, I wish I could have just listened to any Palestinian on the ground in Gaza or to any Israeli leadership who is saying we're going to do a genocide. Watch this. But it's another major organization who is making these claims. And we're starting to see that divide between the liberal international community comprised of NGOs and other organizations like the UN, and the liberal Western media, who, 18 months ago, if one of these organizations released something like this about any other group, it would have been front page of the world section. But there has been no coverage on front pages, maybe incidentally here and there, of either the Amnesty or the Human Rights Watch reports in New Zealand. It's fucking foul. This is turning into a thing I hate. Surprise, surprise. I was having a rant about it yesterday, went
The
and checked
Kyle classic.
both stuff and read New Zealand world pages. Nothing about Gaza on either among all the stories. Just nothing at all. Let alone like these enormous humanitarian organizations accusing Israel of genocide. You would have thought. You would have thought. But yeah, I mean it's led as well alongside that this week Israel is closing its embassy in Ireland because Ireland supported South Africa's genocide case against Israel in the International Court of Justice. Good. More countries should become hostile enough towards the state of Israel that they feel like they have to close their fucking embassy. I suspect maybe Ireland were going to kick them out and Israel jumped first. All the normal stuff got thrown at Ireland and got thrown at the Irish Taoiseach around being anti-Semitic and et cetera, et cetera. It's so fucking tired now. Yeah, I wish our own government had some fucking guts because we're so far past the point where we are required as a member of the international community to sanction Israel and to take effective action against them for what they're doing in Gaza and Lebanon and Yemen and Syria. And instead we're joining in on parts of that, right? Like that's my lovable thing for the week.
I like how you turn everything into a hate train. Like that's a Kyle skill. You just like everything that's good, you just have like a 15-minute side diatribe about why it's actually oh so bad.
Look, only my friends and family get the good stuff about things I actually like. Sorry to the rest of you. Maybe we'll bring back the pop culture cast in the new year.
I forgot that I had a good thing, which is that I've been shooting more of the short film, and actually we've done 80% of it, just not the flashbacks and things. Which wrangling kids is going to be hard, but that'll be for the new year. I'd hoped to have wrapped everything by the end of this year, but it's what it is, right?
80% is pretty incredible. Especially given when we're talking, a couple of weeks ago, you were not sure about getting the dates tied down.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, that's been quite positive and it's good. And I hate, again, this is not a thing that I hate, but I really don't like doing a shoot and then after wrapping being like, oh, I had a really good idea for a shot. But that always happens. There's always stuff where you're like, I would have done that better. You just don't have luxury, I guess, of
Write it down.
There's never enough time of prep. There's never enough, whatever it is. Like, and I've been churning this over in my mind for a long time. The script is like nearly a decade old, but still, there are things where you don't know until you get to the set on the day or the location what your limitations are, and so you have to adjust, your storyboards and everything. And I just had an idea for a shot where I thought, oh, you know what? I didn't realize, but we could have done that. We could have done something quite interesting there, and then just didn't. But that's
kind
okay.
of like politics. You just you have all the theory and you're thinking about how to do it, but you don't really know exactly how it's going to be implemented until you're on the ground, and that sucked. But I'm glad that your film shoots are going well.
Yeah. So look forward to that. Hopefully sometime in the new year.
All right, let's tie it up. Will there be another podcast? Potentially. Potentially there'll be another podcast post-Christmas. It'll depend how many people get wrangled and if I can be fucked.
New Year live stream. Get drunk.
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not doing a New Year's live stream. Illegal. That's been
Day
another
after
episode.
hangover live stream.
Okay, maybe. That's been another episode of 1 of 200. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you again to my co-hosts, Simone. Thank you for joining us.
And that's some more good news. Unto us a child is born, Kyle. He is the lamb. Various other things.
Wonderful. Yeah. We're,
the herald angels are harking.
Yeah, they're harking away. Thank you, Ginny, for joining us as well.
No problem.
And thank you to everyone for joining us this year. Should we not get another opportunity to say those thank yous because I don't pull an episode together. It's been fantastic to be delivering content to all of you and to have such a good and loyal audience. It's fantastic to meet a whole bunch of you this year as well, both online and in person. And yeah, we've got plenty more happening in 2025. So get on board, join us, and help recruit. Get in touch with your local organizations.
Yeah, thank you to
Um,
everybody who did Prisoners Correspondence Network, who was writing letters to prisoners in Kirikiriroa and also like elsewhere around the country. Like huge thanks to you.
Yeah, people are getting out. People are getting out, and it's that's a lovable thing for the entire year. We're seeing a lot more activation. We're seeing a lot more people getting involved, understanding what the stakes are, and yeah, just looking to help. All right. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you later.
If artificers are then I'm living a pointless life, but learning all your lessons. Fucking politics, there's no distinction. The road's upon now. It's paid with good intentions, and I'll admit that I'm at a loss for what to say when they quote this as a cost we ought to stay. I live amongst the people every day in this vindictive, forgetful fucking rain. It feels like we're on the road to hell.